It is, like I said out in the service, really an honor. This is my first time ever speaking in a church, in front of a church. And just the fact that we were once digital pen pals and now I have the incredible hospitality of everyone in your org is super special. And I'll say it one other time, but you'll see the flag throughout my speech. Really, like from Israel, Toda Rabah. Like, thank you. Because when I walk into a service like that, which was beautiful, and I look to my right and I see that flag, it's chills down my spine. And so really, I really appreciate that. What I'm going to talk to you all about today is my story, growing up both in the States and in Israel, and how basketball has played a part in my life to humanize the conversation of Israel. And I want to give context that I think is incredibly important for you to understand why that plays a part in my life and how I was raised. So we can go to the next slide. I thought the screen was going to be bigger, so I'm going to do my best to help out. Why am I here? I took this screenshot at 6:35 this morning. That was not the original slide that I had prepared for you. Can I stand on this?
Yes.
Yeah. And the slide behind me is why am I here? And when I woke up this morning at 6:30, I probably opened my eyes at 6:32, 6:33. The alert, that's my nephew who I've blurred out, but the alert on the bottom of the screen says critical rocket and missile fire. Yes. That's because back in Tel Aviv, where I live, there was once again another set of rockets fired at my home. Why am I here? Why am I speaking to you? I said a minute ago, I'm here to humanize the conversation of what's going on in Israel and to share truth, the real truth. And so I'm here because this morning, again, we see an incredible existential threat faced towards Israel and what I call home. And it is important for me to be a member of the Israeli people to talk about why this reality is not an okay reality and that we need to be discovering more truth. We can go to the next slide. I want to tell you a little bit about my shorashim, which are my roots. I was born and raised in the greater Boston area. Both of my parents are rabbis. And thank you. I, by definition, came out with a lot of Jewish stuff in my life. The house was Jewish, synagogue was Jewish, my friends were Jewish, everything, and it was beautiful. Really loved it. So much so that when I was 6 years old in 2001, my father got accepted to a program called the Jerusalem Fellows, which was a program in Jerusalem to study with 20 rabbis from across the world. And so my family went to Israel. The picture on the screen on the right, which is actually a picture, and there will be several throughout this talk, that I want you to sort of keep in mind, because there's a theme here. The picture on the right is my brother and I. We're sitting in the complex called the Dan complex, which is where I used to live in Jerusalem. And we're sitting sort of in a circular open space. Underneath was the garage. This was like the place that we hung out. And this is actually, as far as I'm concerned, the only picture that I have with my brother from the time that we lived in Israel, which is a shame, but because it was 2 years. But my shorashim and my roots are rooted in the States and in Israel. We can go to the next slide. All of you recognize this picture. And I was 6 years old when we moved, and this was in 2001. Between 2000 and 2005, we unfortunately had the second intifada, which was a wave after the first intifada in the mid to late 1990s of terrorist attacks on a consistent basis in homes, in school buses, in restaurants. And I was 6 years old, American going to Israel, this foreign country, don't even know Hebrew really that much. But I did not appreciate, and we'll get to this later, the fact that I lived in a place called Talpiot, which is 13 minutes from that picture. I spent my shorashim, my roots, at the holiest place possible for me, And at the time, I didn't appreciate it because I was clouded by war. One morning, I was walking to school with my brother. We walked down the stairs, and the school was about 4-5 minutes walk from my doorstep. An NFL football field is 100 yards. And so, to give you a frame of reference here, we were walking down the street, and about 50 to 60 yards from where we were, a car bomb exploded.
Wow.
And I say to myself, like, what if I didn't brush my teeth that morning? What if I didn't take the apple out of the fridge? What if I didn't have to go to the bathroom? It's just a matter of those things that, only looking back, I started to understand the perspective of the Middle East. We can go to the next slide. In Judaism, we have this concept of tikkun olam. Tikkun is to repair, and olam is the world. Giving back, charity, donations, volunteering, repairing things that need to be repaired. I mentioned to you, which is an extremely big part of my life, and this is why I'm giving you all this context. One of the most beautiful things that my parents did as two rabbis in a house, which, by the way, is super uncommon in, mother, father, rabbis. How is that possible? Well, I had that. Is they raised I have an older brother who's 4 years older than me. They raised my brother and I in a way that we should never discriminate anyone else based on their religion, the race, ethnicity, skin color, language, heritage, food menu, doesn't matter. And I got this at 6 years old when I lived in Israel, because that is a picture of the Negev, the southern desert. And it's quite blurry, so I'm going to do my best to explain. There is a pin there on the map, which is pinned to a place called Walid al-Nam. It's a Bedouin village in southern Israel. Bedouins are nomadic Arabic people who are sort of on the move in southern Israel. At 6 years old, my parents took my family down there because we spent 2 weeks in a tent. We found out that their drinking water had chemicals seeping into them, and they were drinking dirty drinking water. They were getting ill. So my parents took us down there to help build them a medical facility from haystacks and treat them so that they were not getting ill anymore. I didn't speak Arabic, they didn't speak English, and I didn't speak Hebrew. I communicated with them with sign language and sounds with my mouth, pretending like I knew Arabic, with other 6, 7, and 8-year-olds who were Bedouins, and it didn't matter. The fact that they weren't Jewish, that I didn't speak Arabic, what mattered, and I loved what you said out there, that I apologize if I'm misquoting you, is that you don't need to understand the Bible, or you said it here, you don't need to understand the Bible to understand good ethics and good morals. And I really, really, really respect and appreciate that. That's what I got at 6 years old. So I spent 2 weeks here with a foreign group. But what perspective, what amazing opportunity. And so Tikkun Olam, which also plays a massive role into my life, was dosed very early. And I can't thank my parents anymore for that, because that's a big part of who I am. We can go to the next slide. Homeland and hoops. And you're going to see a theme of the word homeland and see that evolve throughout this talk. We went back to the States in 2003. So I lived there 2001, 2002, 2003. And in Israel, of course, is the first time I ever picked up a basketball. I picked it up at a school called Ephrata, which is where I went to school when I was in 1st and 2nd grade. I fell in love with the game. And so I went back to the States, and my only goal was to go to the NBA, to be the best basketball player I could possibly be. Side note, I learned very early on that I was a semi-athletic Ashkenazi Jew from Boston. I was not going to the NBA. It was not going to happen. But, that's how the cookie crumbles. This picture, similar to the one of my brother, is another picture that I sort of want you to remember for a little while. This picture was taken at Mount Bental, which is in the Golan Heights, overlooking northern Israel, overlooking Syria. This picture was taken in 2011 because I had the opportunity to play in the Junior Maccabi Games, which are essentially the Junior Jewish Olympics for basketball. And I went there on a delegation with other people from Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. We went to go play basketball, and we also traveled. This picture, you can't see, but I have a necklace on. It's a big basketball. And the picture is actually inside of a bunker where, back in the day, war was taking place on top of Mount Bental. And so I'm sitting inside of a bunker where the Israelites, the ancient Israelites, the old Israelites, provided and saved my home for me to be able to be here. And this picture for me was always a moment of gratitude, homeland, and of course the hoops, which is hanging on my neck. We can go to the next slide. Hoop dreams to grit is essentially the pillar of my life. You talked about grit earlier. I'm gonna expand on it now. After 2011, I went back to the States. All I cared about was basketball. I played in 2 high schools and in 2 colleges, New York State, Elmira College, which is near Ithaca, and I played at Curry College, which is another school right outside of the greater Boston area. But the picture on the right actually tells the story of my basketball career, because starting at the age of 16, I'm 29 now. Up until now, actually, I experienced a very, very long career of injuries, physical injuries. We're not going to get into all of them because it would bore you, but back stuff, shin stuff, leg stuff, knee stuff, everything. Like I said earlier, I was that Ashkenazi Jew from Boston. It wasn't happening to the NBA. But the consistent adversity and challenges and obstacles I had to go through, not just from a physical standpoint, but from a mental and spiritual standpoint, built what I do call bulletproof resilience. The ability to get punched in the face and get back up. And so I started several years ago this idea, which I actually call GRIT, which stands for Gain Resilience in Time, which is, to me, not just a reflection of my basketball athletic journey. It's a reflection of Israel. It has a lot to do with the story of Am Yisrael, the nation, Eretz Yisrael, the country. And if you go anywhere in the world and you ask somebody who has been to Israel, Jew or non-Jew, and you ask them, if you could describe Israeli people in one word, what word would that be? 8 to 9 out of 10 people would say resilient, because it is a non-negotiable in order to survive there. And I see an incredible parallel between basketball, the resilience that I had to build, and Israel, the resilience that it has to have. We can go to the next slide. So I wasn't succeeding so much on the basketball court, but those 2 years when I lived in Israel for 1st and 2nd grade planted the Israel bug inside of me. I was the only one in my family. My brother, let's say if I didn't live there, he probably wouldn't go visit. So it was just me. I started to work for Taglit, which is Birthright Israel, an organization that sends annually tens of thousands of Jews across the diaspora to Israel, most of which it is their first time ever in Israel, to explore their Jewish identity. For the first time, they take them to Tel Aviv, they take them to Jerusalem, they take them to Masada, they take them to Mount Bental, they take them down to the desert, they take them to Eilat in 10 days. It's the first time. People, men and women, have their bar and bat mitzvahs at the Kotel. They have them at Masada. And in 2016, I went on my birthright trip. It was just 10 days. But when I came back, it was 10 days that I can't really explain, because it took me back to the 2 years that I was there in 1st and 2nd grade, even in the midst of war. So I started staffing trips. I started taking delegations of birthright participants twice in the summer, twice in the winter. This is a picture of me with one of the groups. So I say homeland again because suddenly I started to feel like, wait a minute, I am back here for a reason and I want to explore this. We can go to the next slide. More than a homeland, because that picture on the left is one that I showed you earlier. And that picture on the right is me in 2016 at the same exact spot at Mount Bental. And I know it's just a picture, and it's the same spot that I was at previously. But before I went back to that bunker, when I realized that I could see the line above the top left of the window, I looked at this picture before I went. I did not remember exactly where this was. And I asked all my Israeli friends, I know I don't have a lot of context for you, but does this picture on the left, meaning the wall, does it look familiar to you? And one friend of mine, out of a wild guess, she said, I think that's Mount Bental in the north. And so when I went back there to go find it, all I was looking for was that line, which is right there. The graffiti has changed, the writing has changed, but the line was right there. And to you, it's probably not so crazy. It's just a place. Like, I'm standing on this stage, I could come back here in 20 years and take a picture, it's a stage. No. For me, when I found that bunker, I broke down. This is not surprising to me, because that's what Israel is. It is full of holiness and spirituality, and it is special. And I say more than a homeland because, again, this picture that could have been taken of me now on the stage wouldn't hit the same way. And I think that that's one of the special parts about Israel. We can go to the next slide. I told all of you that when I lived in Israel as a kid, in Jerusalem, I had the opportunity to live 13 minutes from the Kotel, which is an honor and a privilege at the age of 6. I didn't appreciate it then. There's a tradition when you go to the Western Wall that you take a note, you don't have to, and you can share something with God. You can write something, you can ask for something, you can pray for something, you can wish for something. And you can put it in the wall. And if you look through the cracks, if you've been to the Kotel, it's flooded with papers. Because every single day people there are trying and doing their best and experiencing their moment to share with God. And actually, they take these notes and they bury them at the Mount of Olives, which is a cemetery right near the Kotel, so that they don't get thrown out, so that they remain in soil in Israel. And so my notes, which we'll get to in a second, are still in Israel. They haven't left. We can go to the next slide. You can see that the title of this slide is Home with Land crossed out in a question mark, because in 2016, I begun to question. So my family lives in the States, but I keep finding myself coming back to Israel. Why? Why am I doing this? The picture on the left is of me in 2016 on that birthright trip that I told you about. I'm wrapped in tefillin, and there's a note on the right. I'm an extremely sentimental individual. I take pictures, I document my life, I share them, and it means a lot to me. And I just want to say, when I took the picture of this note 9 years ago, I asked myself, what am I going to do with this? I'm going to frame it? And last night, after spending time with Bishop's family and getting settled, I realized I took that picture 9 years ago to come share with you today. That's why I took that picture. And this is the first time ever I am sharing this publicly.
Wow. That's cool.
The picture on the right, which I'm going to get close because it is blurry, is dated June 22nd, 2016. That is my handwriting. That is black pen and blue pen. That is me. I'm going to read the note out loud to you, if you don't mind. I hope, 1:15 p.m. God, I hope that one day I can somehow make it to Israel. Living here has given me the opportunity to live through you, the most sacred way, in the heart of Judaism. I love you, Israel, my religion, my faith, my beliefs, my identity, and my heart. Please keep me in line, striving to be true, staying true to Israel and Yerushalayim. Barak Swarttz. I took that note. I took that note, I put it in the wall. I've been to the Western Wall too many times. This was the first time and the only time I put a note in the wall, wrapped in tefillin, look up, and break. Oh my God, did I cry. Out of body experience. Out of body experience. I had been there before. In fact, I had been there almost once a month when I lived there, when I was that 6-year-old in Talpiot in Jerusalem. This wasn't a new place for me. But that day, and by the way, that picture, the note, and you can fact check me because the color of my pants are gray, and those are the same gray pants because that note was taken right before the picture. So I wrote the note down. I'm even holding the note in that hand. It was all the same moment. That note, tefillin, touch wall. And 2016 is when I started to really ask myself, do I want to come back home? We can go to the next slide. Oh boy, okay, that's blurry. All right. And now you see, this slide is called home. Not the homeland, not home again, not more than a home, not home, home. I told you I'm very sentimental, sometimes a little bit crazy, but this picture is notes that I took when I told both of my parents that I want to leave the States and go to Israel. I just wanted to hear what they had to say. I wanted to hear what their reaction was. My parents, 2 rabbis, who, the man that you are looking at, this is them. And my brother, and my best friends, they made me. And I just wanted to hear what they had to say. And in fact, I don't know why. And maybe it's because I care so much and I'm a pretty anxious kid and I have anxiety because I care. I was nervous about their response. I thought they were going to be like, you want to go where? I took a pen, just like I always do. And I wrote down every single thing that my parents said. I'll never forget. I went down to the basement. My dad was watching Hallmark. I said, you got to pause Hallmark for a second. Grab my mom. Ima Naba. Ima, boy, come downstairs. Now they were nervous because they were like, what does he want? And I don't ever stop Hallmark for him. Abba, don't watch this. I said, I want to talk to you guys about something. I said, I don't know how else to say this, but I want to move to Israel. I was shaking. I was like, the hand was like this. I'm going to see if I can read my parents' writing. This is 2019, by the way. Ima, the first thing that she said, this is something you need to do and see if this is your calling. I saw this coming. My dad, I'm not surprised either. I knew exactly where it was on your to-do list. I'm 100% supportive. I took a picture of this. I said to myself, why did I just take a picture of this? This was back in 2019. I just took a picture of my parents saying what they think about me. Why did I take a picture of this? I took a picture because these are the moments in my life that remind me exactly why I'm doing what I'm doing and why I went to Israel. I didn't need their approval. If they said, you can't do it, we're not going to let you. For some reason, that's what I was scared of, but that's the anxiety that I have. And I'm showing this to you because the home is underlined, not just for me. The home is underlined because they knew I had to go. They were waiting for me to tell them that I'm going to Israel. I knew it. I could see it in their eyes. We can go to the next slide. Oh, here's another note. Great. So this note, I take lots of them. State of Israel, Eretz Yisrael. So we went from homeland to more than a home, to home, to home, to Eretz Yisrael. It's home. This picture was taken on June 25th, 2019, back at where? The Western Wall. It's my chance to now have a moment again, because, wow, I really am here now. I'm going to read this note out loud. We meet again, saw you in January last summer, 2016, 2011, and 2001 to 2003. Today, June 25th, 2019, I came back to you. This time, I am here, like home. I'm finishing a birthright trip, then working at a basketball camp with Tamir Goodman. Get this. I'm then going to work with Maccabi Tel Aviv, and I told myself in January that I would want to, and now I am, and I'm back to explore myself, my career, and further you. Well, here I am. When I'm here with you, I am myself, and I am completely true. I'll be back soon, here forever. I love you, Barak Swarttz. Can you go to the next slide? I mentioned Maccabi Tel Aviv. Maccabi Tel Aviv is the NBA of Israel. It is the most prestige team in Israel. They house NBA players, former and current. On that note, I said, I'm coming back to work for Maccabi Tel Aviv because at one point I wrote on a note that I want to work for Maccabi, and I put it in the Western Wall. That one I clearly didn't take a picture of, but you know, it was a moment, I guess. And so, 2019, I came to Israel, aliyah, la'alot, to climb, to go up. The picture on the left is me standing on the Maccabi Tel Aviv gym. Next to me, on the left, that's Denny Avdia, who is currently an NBA player for the Portland Trail Blazers. This year as in 2019, I had the opportunity to train Denny Avdia, Omri Caspi, Amari Stoudemire, many other NBA players. And that gym where I'm standing, before I came to Israel and I realized that I wanted to work for Maccabi, I went on Google and I typed in Maccabi Tel Aviv basketball gym 3D map. I wanted to see what it looked like. I wanted to look around and understand. I'd never been to a basketball gym like that ever in Israel. I went to Google, I found a 3D map, I did the whole thing. And then a year later, I walked into the gym and I was standing at the exact place where the camera was on the 3D map. And that's because I put a note into the kotel and it actually came true. Wow. That's why. For 4 years, I worked in basketball. The picture on the left was with Maccabi. The picture on the right was with another team called Ironi Nes Tziona, which is another team in the Israeli Basketball League. In 2021, we won the first ever European FIBA championship. It had never happened in Israel, so I had 4 years of training the most elite basketball players at the highest levels. I was on a high. this American back in Israel liaison between the States and Israel for basketball players, but also representing Israel and also fulfilling all of these times coming back to Israel, putting notes into the wall, having moments, having conversations. Here I am doing it. Can we go to the next slide? This is where, obviously, the story changes very quickly. I'm 29 years old, so when I made Aliyah, when I got my passport, I was 25. And there are times when the IDF does not necessarily enlist every single immigrant into Israel for various reasons. Apparently mine was the age, because it can get a little bit bureaucratically complicated when you're a 25-year-old American immigrant and the commander is 19 years old. So I had what I'll call survivor's guilt for a very long time. Every single time there was a war in Israel, my friends got a call, packed a bag, went to go protect the country. Gaza, Lebanon, Judea and Samaria. I never got a call. So I would sit in Tel Aviv while my friends were on the front lines, sacrificing and risking their whole lives to protect me and everyone else. This didn't always sit with me so well. I felt like all of these times going to the Kotel, the 2 years I spent living in Israel, my parents, everything that I've shown you so far, but I can't contribute. I have to contribute. It's my responsibility to contribute. Clearly, there's two themes in this entire conversation. There's basketball and there's Israel. And if you sliced my heart open right now and you looked at it as a pie chart, you would see family, basketball, and Israel. Those are the three things that you would see. You can clap. So much so that I wouldn't even call it 33, 33, 33. I'd gauge Israel up pretty high up there. I decided to park my entire basketball career, training players, social media. I was filming them. I was with Denny. I was with all these people, connections, and I said, you know what? I'm an American. I come from the basketball world. I speak fluent English. I speak fluent Hebrew. I like telling stories. I'm just going to start talking about the Middle East through culture and through sports to humanize the conversation of what is going on back at home after what happened on October 7th. Because what happened on October 7th, as all of you know, is something that I was not willing to not talk about. And I was not willing to just sit in my room while my friends were in Gaza. One of my friends got killed at the Nova Festival. And I flew back to Boston on October 10th because I didn't feel so safe. And I said, and I wasn't sleeping, and my friends were in Gaza. Next thing you know, they're in Lebanon. I said, I'm gonna use my skills as a storyteller, and I'm gonna talk about Israel. I'm not gonna do it about politics. I'm not gonna be extreme. I'm not gonna be radical. What I am gonna do is I'm gonna use basketball and the thing I know the most and love the most to try and talk about what is happening.
So good.
Because what is better than culture? You have to establish common ground with somebody that you're trying to reach across the aisle to create a safe space to talk about the Middle East. You can't just talk about it. It's too polarizing. Mm-hmm. And I understood that. I understood that because I come from basketball. At 6 years old, my parents took me to the Negev to build a medical facility for Bedouin children. I came back to the States, pursued a career in basketball, and in between those four lines, which is my sanctuary, are Jews, non-Jews, Muslims, Christians, blacks, whites, everything. When I stepped foot into that space, None of those things mattered. All that mattered was basketball. Sharing that time together to compete, sharing that time together as a brotherhood. What a better way. What a better way for me to be able to talk about something that is so polarizing. I decided to enlist myself in my own voluntary army service as an online warrior, talking about Israel from a completely different perspective, talking about it from the perspective of somebody who, to be honest, has skin in this game. Not only am I from America, I used to live there when I was a kid. A car bomb went off on my street when I was 6 years old. I spent time at 6 years old with Arab people, with those Bedouins. I lived in Jerusalem. My father, who has spent a lot of his life trying to find ways to be able to bridge communities, co-founded an organization called the Black Jewish Worcester Alliance back in the greater Boston area, where he takes members from the Jewish and the Black communities to come together to figure out how we can help each other, support each other, fight racial discrimination, fight the injustice, because that's what happened back in the civil rights movement. That's what we did. In fact, my parents, going back to Tikkun Olam, repairing the world, when I graduated college, my mom, my dad, myself, my brother, and my sister-in-law, they took us down to the South. Alabama, Selma, Montgomery, Georgia. We did a civil rights trip as a family. I crossed the Selma Bridge with Joanne Bland, who was a civil rights activist who marched with John Lewis and Martin Luther King. I went to the Martin Luther King Museum. I went to the Rosa Parks Museum. I went to these places because this is the same mom and the Imam Abba, the same rabbis, who wanted to make sure that their two children understood how important it is to not lose those values they gave me when I was 6 years old, building a medical facility out of haystacks for Bedouin kids. And that's why I feel like I have skin in this game, to be able to have the authority to talk about back in Israel. 10/7, October 7th, changed my whole life. Publicly, when I start talking about Israel on social media, basketball isn't so easy to go back to once people hear your opinion. I find that very telling. We can go to the next slide. I know I'm rushing on time. Yep, sorry. So my calling was to be able to start talking about Israel. I filmed myself. I created an online community of mostly non-Jews, Christians, and Muslims from across the world. We get together online and talk about what is going on. I go to basketball courts, which is actually what we did, Bishop and I, a few months ago back in Israel. We did a video together called Courts and Conflicts, where I take people from all walks of faith and life and we talk about Israel from a humanitarian perspective to show people that I'm just an American who likes basketball. There's a lot of things we have in common. Let's talk about it. I'm going to speed up a little bit because I didn't realize that I'm short on time here. I apologize. We can go to the next slide. I was sent on delegations across the world, New York, Washington, D.C., to have meaningful dialogue with people who radically disagree with me on the perspective of the Middle East. And I find that my approach using basketball to do so has given me some of the most profound conversations. And these are pictures from some of those experiences in the streets of New York, in the streets of Washington, when Bibi was testifying in D.C., where I'm speaking to people who didn't want me there. Let's put it that way. But because of my approach for basketball, I was able to find these conversations. We'll go to the next slide. Shlichut, which is your mission, to be on a mission, which is me standing here in front of you right now, talking to different communities across the world. I'm on my first speaking tour doing this. And you can see that this was in New York a few weeks ago, me holding that basketball, because I found that basketball has been my medium to be able to reach different communities. We can go to the next slide. I might skip a few of these because there are, can we just press next for a little while until you get to, I'll send this to you guys. These are just, you can keep going. Because there's something very important that I want to end with here. Sorry, Bishop, I can clearly talk a lot. All right. Next one. Ha'emet, which is the truth. Mm-hmm. And not only am I standing here telling you my story about the truth, because I live there and I've experienced it, I thought, just like the first slide, how else can I bring you truth besides pictures and a guy speaking on a microphone? The pictures behind me are me in Metula, which is the northernmost city in Israel. You can literally see Lebanon and Syria 3 or 4 football fields away. And this is on a basketball court, the only basketball court in Metula, where children growing up every single day go out there and hang and play basketball and, jump rope or whatever. And when I went there a few months ago, it is easily the most destructed place I've seen in Israel. Houses are gone, cars are gone. It is sparse. There's nobody there. But when I was at this basketball court, I found a very big piece of rocket shrapnel that I have here with me today. This rocket shrapnel is exactly what is being used against Israel every single day. Just like this morning at 6:35 when I woke up and took a screenshot to show you what's happening back at home for me. This rocket shrapnel was meant for kids playing basketball on a basketball court.
Wow.
This rocket shrapnel is supposed to free Palestine.
Wow.
I brought this here for you because I want you, if you would like, to come, hold this, touch it and feel it, smell it, sense it, and understand that this existential threat that Israel's under is tangible.
Right.
I didn't buy this. Nobody gave this to me. I picked this up with my own 2 hands, of course, at a basketball court, that sanctuary of mine, in Israel. And I brought this from Metula to you so that you can understand what it's like back in the Middle East.
Yeah.
One more slide, Bishop. I know I'll finish up right now. One more slide. Keep going. Someone said this. I believe there is a geographical center to the spiritual universe. I believe it is linked centrally to one physical location, and I believe that location is Jerusalem. You guys know who said that? Bishop said that. Bishop said that when we were playing basketball in my video together 3 months ago. That is exactly where I lived as a kid, and that's exactly where I live now. And I couldn't agree with that anymore. One more. I knew you could come on. One more. Sorry, guys. I gotta shorten this. This is actually. I'm gonna end here. The picture on the left is a picture of my parents' ketubah, my parents' marriage agreement. I blurred it out for respect. Every single Shabbat dinner that I've had since I have been alive with my parents bless my brother, then my parents bless me after we do the Kiddush. And they say the blessing of the children first. Yivarech Adonai v'yishmerecha, Yair Adonai, they finish. And my mom, since I've been alive, adds a verse right after of her choosing. This verse is from Isaiah 54, verse 10. It is written on the outside of my parents' marriage agreement. You guys know this verse. This promise and this covenant that I have to Israel not just runs in my family, it runs in my life. And that verse, to me, is a reflection of my journey going to Israel and now being here in front of you and bringing it back home to you.